Joe, Texas versus Georgia, a playoff eliminator potentially for the University of Texas. Georgia absolutely manhandling Mississippi State last week. Joe, as we preview this game, how do you see it going down?
Well, you just mentioned the game where they manhandled Mississippi State. They finally got some sack production. And, of course, it comes in a game where they're playing a very bad offensive line. Blake, I think that the first and foremost –
By the way, but hold on. Did you know Mississippi State's top 25 in not allowing sacks? I went and checked.
No, they're not. No. We did when we did our preview.
Yeah, hold on. Keep going.
They were going into that game having allowed like 29 sacks or something like that. I think that you might be mixing them up with somebody else. I'll double check that if you want me to.
Okay.
Blake, the most important thing for this game, Georgia's a 6.5-point favorite on FanDuel.
It's Ole Miss.
It was Ole Miss. That's who it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Mississippi State's offensive line was atrocious. Blake, this is all going to be decided along the lines of scrimmage. This game absolutely is decided out of any game that we could talk about this weekend or maybe even this month that will be decided along the line for multiple reasons. Arch Manning's best performance of the season came against Vanderbilt, in which he received no real pressure. He didn't get sacked. He was able to operate with poise. He was able to command just so much more of the offense because he did not have pressure in his face. On top of this, we know that Georgia is having issues with getting after the passer. We know that they're having a lot of problems with getting sack production. They only have 11 sacks on the year. Inversely, for Georgia's sake, they've had a lot of success running the football, and their offense's best performances have come when Chauncey Bowens and Nate Frazier have been just an easy time picking up gains on the ground.
Yeah,
they're facing off against one of the best run defense in the country. They are fourth in defensive EPA per rush allowed. Like, this is going to be decided by which team's offensive lines play the best. Is it Georgia's offensive line that's going to beat up on this Texas D-line? Is it going to be this Georgia pass rush finding success against this Texas offensive line? What is it going to be? I think that is going to be the most important aspect of who ends up winning this ball game.
You know, you talk about that run defense. Texas is currently second in the country, only allowing 78.2 rush yards per game. Georgia's 12th. But, Joe, I got to throw this out there. I wonder if in this game, and you don't go in here and say for a team like Georgia to change your identity, right? Like, I'm not asking Georgia in this game to change their identity. However, when I do look at this game, and I do look at how Colin Simmons has been playing, how Anthony Hill's been playing, how that front seven's been playing, kind of to what we thought in the preseason of what they would do this season. They've really started turning up and turning out. The question that I have here is, can that Texas secondary hold up? Now, you think to yourself, Blake, what are you talking about? We got a lot of really good players. You do. Joe, they're 94th in the country in passing yards allowed. They're either boom or bust. Either they're getting to the quarterback or they're not. Either they're causing havoc or they're not. And a lot of teams have put up a lot of yards against them. I think of Florida and what Florida did. Georgia's got a lot of explosiveness from their wide receiver. And by the way, their tight ends can be very explosive themselves. Joe, did you see by the way, Gunnar Stockton's stats? He's number one in the SEC in QBR. He's number one in completion percentage, and he's number two in TD to interception ratio. I don't know if I don't want to say deviate from who you are. You got to be who you are. And I'm not saying go away from the style. But, Joe, I am definitely attacking this secondary. I think Gunnar Stockton has grown more than maybe that we expected, but that nobody's really talking about and how he does things. Joe, his sack, when he gets sacked, it's never a massive loss. He always has the awareness to only take few sacks that are only a couple yards, and it gives them still a chance during drives. This Texas defense is as advertised in the front seven. Sacks, run defense, and that is what Georgia's done over the last month, is just bludgeon teams over and over. You talked about Bowens, who's really gotten going. When I preview this game, I don't know if you don't deviate and say, hey, Gunnar, we think we can get after the secondary a little bit and maybe get vertical with Zachariah Branch and company and maybe hit Delp or Lucky on some of these deep drag tight end routes that can kind of open this thing up. Again, Texas is really good, but I don't know if this secondary is going to be able to hold up through 4 quarters if they're able to attack the way that they need to.
I do think you bring up a really intriguing, important part of what to expect from this game. Their offense feels like they've been in a really easy rhythm, as I just mentioned there, when they've found success having balance, when they can run the ball. It was a big criticism that we had of Bobo last year, that they couldn't find that balance, and they've done a much better job this year, hence why they have performed as well as they have. But you bring up a really important layer with this, is that as good as Texas's front seven is, this season they have 34 team sacks. Colin Simmons has 8 on the year. Anthony Hill has 4. They've got so much speed in that front seven, but their corners, their secondary, it just hasn't been consistent. The Mississippi State game is a game that hangs in my head here with talking about this. They gave up 382 yards through the air. They only gave up 63 on the ground. There is a world and a scenario for them that's been created here for Georgia that if you get bottled up early, you can't run the ball, start taking shots, start being aggressive. I kind of wish I dug a little bit deeper into the Mississippi State game before I did this preview, because
that's what you need to know. Vertical, vertical, vertical.
You have the speed to threaten and to attack this secondary if you can find time to operate in the pocket. This Georgia offensive line has been pretty solid. They have only allowed 11 sacks. And for what you just said, Gunnar Stockton has been tremendous at navigating the pocket and not really taking any sacks, even if those situations have arisen. But I think that with that in line, I think that Arch's performance as well is going to be really important for this game, because on the flip side of this, if he's not pressured, how much does this game end up becoming a shootout? I really think that this game is going to be high scoring. I think that this game could kind of reflect and mirror the Ole Miss Georgia game / the Texas Mississippi State game, where both team secondaries maybe end up giving a lot of big plays up, and who ends up having the ball last and who can complete the final drive will end up being the winner.
You know, it's funny. You talk about him taking sacks. Think about this. Georgia's given up 11 sacks on the year for 34 yards lost. Let me say that again. I'll send the link. It's on NC. I'll put it in the chat right now. They've given up 11 sacks, to your point, for only 34 yards. So he's been able to push himself up in that pocket and not be able to take massive yardage losses in those situations. Now, I'm going to flip to the opposite side of this. You know what worries me? You talk about this one being a high-scoring game, and ironically, I thought you were going to go the opposite. I actually don't disagree with you at all. If you do – now listen to your boy. If you do not get after Arch Manning – and you give him time, like Oklahoma did, if you give Arch Manning time, like we saw 2 weeks ago with Vanderbilt, if you give this kid time, he's gonna light you up. Joe, I just got out of my attic. I just got my Christmas tree down, and my wife, I'm sure this weekend's
November. What are you doing? What are you doing?
When you get one of these, okay? If you get one of these, you'll completely understand. Arch Manning, if you cannot get home to him, he's going to light you up like the Christmas tree that's going up in this house right now. I say that to say he has gotten better. What is one thing, too, that we've seen from Georgia that has been a problem? First half starts, which wasn't really a problem last week, and their secondary, who I think has gotten a lot better, and they've gotten better throughout the season, and I think they will continue to get better because they still got a lot of talent. This might be the team that actually can test you in that, though. You had no Dallas Wilson versus Florida, and they still were able to get some shots with Eugene Wilson and the boys. I don't know if you're going to have to heat Arch Manning up, because I think he gives them the best ability, even more than Ewers did a year ago, in reference to his mobility. And if you can't get him down, he's too good of a processor that we've seen the last 3 weeks that I think he makes some big throws. The thing, though, with Texas – offensively, that would worry the shit out of me. You cannot let Arch be one-dimensional. You can't be one-dimensional versus this defense. Joe, we continue to talk about Texas in their run game. They're tied for 95th in the country in rush offense. They only average 135 yards a game. Georgia's is 12th in the country in run defense, only allowing 100.2 yards per game on the ground. Wisner, and company, you better figure it out. You brought up earlier that this offensive line, whichever offensive line plays the best, is going to win. You better not let Arch be one-dimensional. You're going to have to find him a run game or do some extensions of the run. Last but not least, can Ryan Wingo finally start turning this thing on here? Because if he does,
I think he has been. I think Wingo has been over the last couple of weeks.
I felt like the Vanderbilt game was kind of as like, oh shit, well that's the Ryan Wingo everybody thought he could be. He takes the bubble screen to the house and everybody's like, damn. If he can continue to do and show some of those things, I think they're going to be fine. And Joe, you got a dogfight. Pun intended.
I think one other like final layer with this. I feel like which quarterback protects the ball best will be the most effectively positioned to win. And I think that we've seen Gunnar Stockton be really just fantastic. As you mentioned, the touchdown interception ratio, he's 15-2. He has done a great job at mitigating mistakes
in the SEC.
Yeah. Does that change going up against this pass rush? I don't think that it will, but if you're Texas's defense, you're that Texas defense, getting him in a compromising position, forcing him to make a mistake, that's what you need. You can't allow them to get into a rhythm. You can't allow him to play freely. Otherwise, you're going to be on your heels. And then the other part about this is if you're Georgia and you take the momentum away from Arch Manning, who has been arguably one of the hottest quarterbacks of the last 2 games that he played, if he has a pick, how does he respond? Does he respond better than he did previously? Can you get him to take a step backward and regress a little bit by getting into his head, by forcing him to make a mistake? There's just a lot that comes with this. They need to get pressure on Arch. And then the inverse of what you said, I agree with you. Texas needs to get things going on the ground. This one, I'm really shocked that this is a 6.5-point line, man. I really think that Texas is going to give Georgia a real challenge. I think that we shouldn't just overlook this game as ended up being a blowout or just an easy victory for Georgia because Georgia has more momentum. Texas has been surging. And I think that fourth quarter is not reflective of who Texas can be when they're playing at their best. If they play like they did in the first 3 quarters against Vanderbilt, they could very well win this game. It's not a hot take or a ridiculous thing to say that Texas is a legitimate shot of winning this ball game on the road like Georgia did last year. It's totally plausible.
Last thing I'd say on this one, the red zone for Georgia. This Texas defense has given up a lot of yards in the air. Again, 94th in the country in passing yards allowed. They're 11th in the country in scoring defense. They're not giving up many points. You better get points, and I'm not talking about 3. You better get in that red zone, and you better get 7, or you're going to, like you said, get in that dogfight. All right.